This is a shot I took recently. It's probably my favorite photo from this winter so far. Last year was tough when it comes to the weather. In this part of Germany where I live, throughout the year we've had mostly cloudy weather, rain, and wind. Germans even have a term to describe this type of wet and grey weather, graue Suppe, which literally means grey soup. As a photographer who shoots mainly color-negative film, this sort of weather can truly be frustrating. Fortunately, we did get some snow here, which does brighten things up, and it can actually be amazing for photography. Urban spaces and streets become calm, gloomy, poetic, painterly, colors become smoother and more pastel-like. And film naturally renders the white of the snow in a soft, elegant way. You combine that with fog, which tends to show up here quite often, and you get that mysterious winter vibe. This was February, and because I knew the snow might not last, I got out with my Pentax 645 loaded with Portra 400 to get some of that snowy winter magic on film. So let's look at some photos. So this one is a real winter scene. You can almost feel the cold and damp air. Blue tones dominate the image, contrasted by warmer oranges and browns. Metal and glass stand out against the soft, foggy landscape. The space feels vast, almost endless, fading into the white. There's a strong sense of openness, but I guess also isolation. It feels quiet, maybe even a little desolate. And the fact that this is a bus stop adds another layer of meaning. I mean, a bus stop is about waiting, about expectation, about being in between places, and at its core it's meant to provide shelter. The structure seems to be made mostly of metal and glass, and judging by the color and form, it could be a typical East German industrial structure from the 80s or 90s. Prefabricated, modular, practical, built to last, no decoration, geometrical in design, almost just pure function. What I really appreciate is the contrast between this rigid, man-made structure and the natural surroundings. The reddish branches on the left and the brown grass on the ground introduce organic, unpredictable shapes. The snow and fog soften everything, and all that stands in contrast to the hard metal frame and the cold, frosted glass panels. The photograph is taken straight on, in a deadpan style, and that gives it a neutral, almost analytical feel. Shown now as a photograph, suddenly this ordinary object, a bus stop we would normally ignore, becomes worthy of our attention. We start noticing its design, the materials, the colors, maybe even its history. For me, this photograph captures something essential about the area where I currently live, and if I were to live one day, this is the kind of image I would return to. It represents how this place feels to me. Quiet and introspective, yet somewhat charming and exotic, but also a bit desolate and melancholic. I think this shot works mainly because of the colors, the textures, and the overall mood it creates. The house front itself is unusual, and that's mostly because of the materials. For people who aren't familiar with historic towns in Germany or parts of northwestern Europe, it might look a little exotic. So the facade is made of slate, which is called Schiefer in German, and slate has been used for centuries in building houses because it's durable and resistant to the weather, and people still use it today. What's really special is how the slate is arranged, small tiles, almost like fish scales, and that pattern gives the building a very distinctive, almost sculptural look. In this particular house, that polished effect of the slate has aged, And you can see signs of decay and abandonment, which makes the overall scene feel even more nostalgic. The willow tree in front, with its bare branches, adds a sense of melancholy. And in many cultures, willows are associated with mourning and reflection. They are often found in graveyards, by lakes, or in old gardens, and that feeling comes through here as well. As for the composition, I would have liked to place the house more in the center of the frame, but if I had tilted the camera up, the vertical lines of the building wouldn't have been parallel to the edges of the frame. On this overcast winter day, everything looks soft and painterly, which I really like. The textures add to that painterly effect, like the worn wooden plaque on the door, the foggy condensation on the window, and of course the slate tiles on the wall. Overall, it's a strange, moody winter scene, and between the textures, the colors, the geometric composition, and the lonely willow tree, the photo captures a very specific atmosphere, something that feels both historic and abandoned, somewhat quiet and reflective. This is another facade I came across during my walks. It's not much of a winter scene per se, there's just a bit of snow on the ground. In any case, what we see here is a piece of contemporary street art created by a local artist. At first glance, it feels like an underwater scene. There's a submarine-like whale with multiple eyes and mechanical arms playing maracas, an octopus playing guitar, a few fish, one playing a saxophone, a green human-like figure, and even a cat. Honestly, I'm not sure what the story is or how the artist came to this theme. What it seems obvious to me is that the mural brings rhythm, energy, and color to what would otherwise be a very plain urban space. And what I find interesting about this scene is how the street art interacts with the building. Pipes, windows, and doors become part of the composition, and it feels like the building has been inhabited by this surreal organism. There's also a small detail that gives the scene historical context, a poster on the right that reads "Fight Nazis." I guess that's a reminder that even playful murals exist within real-world political and social realities. The composition of the photo itself is very symmetric and deadpan, which gives a neutral, almost analytical perspective. I guess that's one of the interesting things about photography. Sometimes a single shot lets you hold an entire street in your hands, study it calmly, and notice details that otherwise you would have missed. And I think that's very cool. This is a quiet, rural winter scene. The aesthetic is similar to the previous photo, straight, deadpan, very neutral. Right in the center of the frame, we see a small square structure. I think it's either a little barn for storing animal feed or a tool shed. So this barn becomes a central subject. It's like a singular point in the photograph, and I like how it sits in this context, almost squeezed between the trees, placed perfectly in the middle, with white snow in the foreground and a foggy, overcast sky in the background. So that's the symmetry. The cement walls show cracks, and this one in particular runs right through the middle, creating a dynamic diagonal line, which I really like. The wooden door has a lovely texture with faded blue paint that points to the edge of the structure. At the top, the roof has this wavy form, which adds another interesting graphic element. The rectangular window, divided into 3 panes, brings a sense of stability and harmony, parallel to the edges of the frame. And that balance is slightly offset by the incline of the street where the barn stands. I like that small imbalance. It gives the image movement. If everything were perfectly straight, the photo would feel more static and purely graphic. As with the bus stop in the previous image, we see a human-made structure placed among organic forms. We see the hedge trees, the orange leaves on the left, and a small leafless brown bush on the right, which balances the scene. And to address the elephant in the room, there's a traffic sign. That triangular metal sign almost steals the attention in the frame. Its bright red color, sharp geometry, and functional association make it impossible to ignore. A traffic sign feels out of place in this calm winter scene. It suggests order, cities, and movement, while the scene itself is quiet and rural. Tire marks in the snow hint that someone might occasionally drive here, but still the sign feels odd. From a mere composition standpoint, though, I like it. The splash of red interacts with the barn's rectangular forms and adds a touch of tension and ambiguity to the scene. Overall, this is a calm, idyllic winter scene, but it's also intriguing. What I see here is an example of how humans organize space. Every element has a function, and nature is integrated into that functional space. In the end, it almost feels like theatrical, like a minimalist set designed for a play. So, unlike the other shots I've shown so far, this one feels different in terms of composition. Here we actually have a clear vanishing point. The photo isn't taken straight on, it's shot at an angle, and that angle really highlights the repeating pattern of the yellow building. This gabbled roofline repeats and gets smaller as it moves into the distance. And that repetition is one of the things I really like here. It connects to the idea from the previous photo, this sense of organization and functionality, and how the spaces we live and work in can sometimes feel almost like stage sets. So the yellow building looks like some kind of factory or at least an industrial space. The design is quite minimal. It's not completely plain. We see different layers of color and rectangular shapes, but everything feels very geometric and controlled. There are metal bars on the windows, a green metal structure over the entrance, and what looks like an air conditioning unit attached to the wall. All these little details add to the feeling of something industrial, practical, and focused on work. It feels very organized, very functional. This building contrasts strongly with the house on the right. That one looks residential, maybe even abandoned, and it's clearly in decay. It feels more fragile. And I find the relationship between these two buildings really interesting. On one side, you have this structured industrial mindset. On the other, a space that suggests privacy and home life. But somehow, the house doesn't feel separate. It almost feels absorbed into the industrial setting, like it belongs to it. It's as if the house exists for the people who work in the factory or something like that. It's a place to rest, but not really a place to escape. That's where the scene starts to feel a little dystopian, I guess. And then there's the traffic sign, and it adds a bright splash of color to an otherwise muted winter scene. It's placed right between the two buildings, and it hints at movement and human presence, even though everything feels quiet and still. So overall, the urban setting feels ordered and controlled, but also slightly strange. Calm on the surface, but with something a little unsettling underneath. This one almost feels like a postcard sent from a remote, forgotten place or something like that. It's a quiet winter scene, simple, calm, and a little idyllic. But there's also something slightly strange about it. Right in the front of the door on the steps, there's a tree. It's placed exactly where you would normally walk in, and now it's clearly blocking the entrance. That little detail gives the scene a strange twist. I like the textures here. The soft surface of the snow contrasts nicely with the warm, brownish cement wall behind it. And if you look closely, you can see the paint peeling from the wall, suggesting the building has some age and probably hasn't been maintained for a while. That impression is reinforced by the display case on the right side of the door. It was likely used to show a menu or advertise whatever was being sold inside. Maybe this used to be a small restaurant or bar, but now there's nothing inside, nothing to offer. Above the door, there's an old-fashioned green outdoor lamp. A small layer of snow has settled on top of it, a simple winter detail, but visually quite nice. And that little patch of white also helps balance the composition. As you see, most of the lower part of the image is white from the snow, while the upper part shifts towards yellows and browns. And the snow on the lamp echoes that white near the top of the frame and ties the whole image together. The ground and the surrounding area are also covered in snow, which adds to the stillness of the scene. So I was driving on my way home. I was just wrapping up. The sun was setting, and while I was driving, I saw this lonely tree in the white landscape. And I first hesitated to even stop the car because the sun was going down so fast. And I thought I probably don't have enough time to set up and take the shot while there's still light. But I pulled over and did it, and I'm glad that I did. By the way, this was the last shot on that roll of Portra 400, so there was this added pressure. If I had failed, I wouldn't have known in the moment because it's film, and if I had wanted to take a second shot, I really wouldn't have had time to load a fresh roll because the light was nearly gone. So that's film photography. In terms of composition, this shot is quite minimalist. There are two clear objects in the frame, the silhouetted tree on the left and the green mesh fence on the right. These objects sit within a wide landscape background which dominates the frame. There is a strong horizontal line in the lower third of the image, the horizon, and the artificial fence runs almost parallel to that line. The tree creates a strong vertical line, and then there are the man-made diagonal lines that stretch from the fence down to the ground. And I like how these interact with the organic lines of the bare branches of the tree. Again, there's this theme of organic versus man-made forms. We can also draw a visual connection between these fine, repetitive lines of the mesh and the faint yellow grass visible through the snow. It's also very satisfying to see how the upper edge of the protective rubber around the trunk of the tree aligns almost precisely with the horizon line. There isn't much color here. The most obvious is the green of the fence, but there is also a very subtle pink glow from the sunset that manages to seep through the thick fog, even if only slightly. For me, the theme here is isolation, but also resilience. The planting of a single tree in an empty, frozen field speaks of perseverance. It suggests belief in growth, even against the adversity of a harsh environment. After all, the green fence in the field, the tree with its protective ring, all these elements show the act of man upon nature. We see no humans, as is with all other photos in this video, but we clearly feel the human presence through the objects and the structures we build. And here we can contemplate the ways in which we interact and influence with the natural environment around us. that was the last photo, which concludes this video. If you made it through to the end, thank you for watching, and come back to my channel for more videos like this one. I'll see you soon. Bye.